Hello everybody on YouTube, this is Super Nintendo and welcome back to another episode of Luigi's Mansion. In the last episode, we saved our brother. And in this episode, we're gonna go over the cut content and the beta content that I haven't really talked about. As well as just some other things that I haven't really talked about. Such as, welcome to your mansion. Or should I say, our mansion. Ooh, spooky. So there is kind of some cool stuff here. There's little controls. There's a Pikmin movie! Let's watch the Pikmin movie. You have landed on a mysterious planet by accident. Meet the Pikmin. Organize the Pikmin. Oh yeah, this definitely wasn't a, this definitely wasn't a launch title. There's so much different here. Survive with Pikmin. Repair your spaceship. Can you return home? Saving Pikmin Ryan. Not coming to theaters. Okay, let's actually get to the meat and potatoes of this game. So, EGAD's laboratory. There is actually way more to this area than one would first imagine. The ladder actually leads out to the little hut just in front of the mansion. And there is a training room that you can see off screen. It's pretty cool that they managed to render this. It possibly indicates that you would have been able to explore this area a little bit earlier in development. But for now, let's go to the hidden mansion while I talk about some other stuff. Don't get scared stiff, Luigi. So, Hidden Mansion mode. It pretty much is just a new game plus. You can see down there that there is a little star next to our HUD, and in this mode we take more damage, but we also deal more damage to ghosts when we suck them up. I don't know the specifics of how money work in this mode, but it's either that money is worth more or you just simply get more money. Possibly from speedy spirits. But, this mode is pretty just... In the GameCube version, it is pretty simple, but there is a thing that is pretty interesting in European versions, such as the fight with Boonus where you are able to ride on the poltergust. Now, for many years, when I heard about this, I thought it was that the poltergust was basically shooting air out and it was flying around the, flying in the air, and you pretty much were able to ride it like that. But no, it's just that it is basically a car. I did manage to find some footage. Thank you to whomever I am taking the footage from. And that's not going to be the only bit of footage I'm taking from the case of, you know, stuff. Most of the little cut content footage I will be taking from Tetrabit Gaming and TCCO, the cut content of channels. So thank you to those individuals for the footage. I wasn't able to get in contact with them before taking their footage, but hopefully they're okay with it. So yeah, there is quite a lot of cut content, such as the ability to, in early drafts of the game, you had to save Mario within a specific allotted time, or he would be lost. There was also some cut versions of ghosts, such as ELH, a textureless model of a ghost that has a very different type of design to him. And there also... Thanks, Dix. There also appears to be some situations where ELH would have hit you with multiple types of elements, possibly indicating that you had to fight him with the other elements in sort of a rock, paper, scissors type fashion. Likely being where he basically was using fire, so you needed to use water in order to fight that specific, attack. I think this would have been really interesting, and I'm a little sad that the Luigi's Mansion 3D never actually, tried to reincorporate ELH in some way or form. I feel like that would have been really cool, and it also kind of saddens me that that the thing was never used in any fashion in any of the other Luigi's Mansion games. I think that thing would have been really cool, and actually might have been really scary. And speaking of scary, there is a popular rumor, not created by, but certainly popularized by my favorite Let's Player, Chugga Conroy, in his Let's Play of Luigi's Mansion, that says that there was supposed to be a safari ghost in the safari room who had some kind of gun and says something along the lines of he wants to mount Luigi's head on his mantle, or like hang it on his wall or something. This is actually false, and Chugga Conroy has admitted to it in the TRG, in the Runaway Guys playthrough of Luigi's Mansion. So I just feel like it's necessary to kind of talk about that, because I'm sure some people still believe that. No hard feelings, dude. I kind of would have believed that too. But for the sake of getting the rest of the cut content out faster, here are Tetrabit Gaming and TCCO, because I don't remember all of what they said in their video off of the top of my head. So take it away, guys.
Luigi's Mansion has a lot of unused audio, like 24 files that I could find, so I'll go over the more interesting ones. First up, we have a short Super Mario Bros. Theme jingle labeled in the game as Telesa Demo 2. Apparently Telesa is what boos are called in Japan, so it's possible that this chime played when a boo did something to activate it. Next is an audio file named total_score. That's a mouthful, which is the non-looping version of another file named room space. This to me sounds like something that belongs to Madame Clairvoyant and her crystal ball. Next up is a cut file of Totaka's song. Now for those of you that don't know, this is a song that is hidden in various Nintendo games composed by Totaka, such as Animal Crossing, Pikmin, and even Mario Kart 8. Now some of you might know this song also appears as an Easter egg in the game if you wait on the controller configuration screen for 3.5 minutes, but this unused version is much different than that one that appears in the game. Seeing as how it's internally named Pianist Quiz 3 along with numbers 1 and 2, it is believed that it was intended to be played by Melody Pianissima on her piano in the game. Here, have a listen. And next up we have an unused Luigi sound, which was probably meant for when Spooky the dog attacks Luigi.
Nice doggy, oh, pet.
And lastly we have two pretty weird sound effects. First is this creepy sounding creature screech. Now I have a strong suspicion that this screech belonged to one of the bosses that was cut from the final version of the game, but we'll get back to him later. And lastly we have another rather eerie sound clip. Now I don't know what this is from, but this one just gives me the creeps for some reason. Alright, moving along now, we'll take a look at some of the unused graphics and models cut from the game. For those of you that have seen the E3 gameplay of the game from 2001, you may recall that the Game Boy Horror in the game had a much different display than in the final game. Originally it appears that the Game Boy Horror had a clock feature as well as a radar system which could warn you of nearby ghosts. This is much different than the final release of the game in which the Game Boy only displayed the player's money stats. Next up is a weird one. For some reason there is an icon of Daisy left over in the game's files. Even weirder is that this icon is actually just a crop from her official art from Mario Tennis for the N64. I seriously have no idea why this would be in the game. Maybe Luigi was supposed to rescue her initially instead of Mario. Who knows? These three Luigi graphics were also unused in the final cut of the game. Ranging from worst to best, these were probably going to be used for the different level of endings that the player could get. I find all three of these to be pretty creepy actually. I mean, look at that face. Let's see what's behind these curtains. Oh, hello. Like I mentioned earlier, it is believed that this creepy model was the basis for a boss ghost which was meant to be in the game, but was eventually scrapped. The model is internally referenced as ELH, or Elch. Based on the entry data, he was created about 6 months after Luigi's Mansion was shown off at E3. Although it lacks any textures and doesn't hurt Luigi if brought into the game via cheat codes, it still has some pretty creepy animations. Next is an unused animation for Luigi that was supposed to be seen when Luigi was poisoned. When poisoned, Luigi would lose health rather quickly. Seeing as how Luigi never actually does get poisoned in the game, it is obvious why this animation was removed. Sleep tight, young pup. Have you ever wanted to see what Luigi would look like as a Matryoshka doll? Well, here you are. This weird model is believed to have been the marker used to show where Luigi was in the mansion while using the Game Boy Horror. I honestly just wish they kept this guy instead. Initially, it looks like there were supposed to be different colors of toads in the game instead of just the regular red ones. Textures can be loaded which show that some of the toads might have been green at some point. Whether they would do something different than the red toads is still unfortunately unknown. What time is it? Unused test room time. Luigi's Mansion unfortunately doesn't have as many unused rooms as some of the other games, but hey, quality over quantity. First up, we have some early versions of the gallery seen in the final game. In the first early gallery, you will notice that these unicorn statues have replaced the angels from the final game. And these unicorns look really similar to that of the one seen at the Boolossus fight on the roof of the mansion. The back room, where normally the final boss's picture hangs, also appears much duller than compared to the final game. The next iteration of the gallery is very similar to the first one, except as you can see, the hallways are much longer. Interestingly enough, we can't actually walk to the end of this hallway for some reason. Even weirder is that if we go through the door, while we can still see the same room from before in the distance, the collision detection still registers it as if we were actually in that room, if that makes any sense. This last gallery map is believed to have been the most early version of the gallery as it has completely different textures, no statues, and an even longer hallway. Similar to the previous map, the collision detection through the doors is again messed up, but this time the intended room is even further away. Saving the best test room for last, we have what looks to be a very early version of the main foyer where you start the game. Right away you'll notice a few things. First, there's a fire which appears later in the game's kitchen. Then we have a creepy floating Luigi arm. This was likely the model used for the animation when Luigi opens a door. Next, we have King Boo without his crown, as well as a candelabra, both half submerged underground for some reason. And lastly, we can see Mario's portrait as it appears after defeating the final bosses. Why are these all here, you might be asking? Well, that's a mystery to everybody. Also, if you haven't yet captured Shivers the Ghost Butler at this point, you can actually still see his shadow creepily moving along the wall. If you try to scan him with a Game Boy Horror, however, the game automatically crashes. You'll notice that there are doors to each of the joining rooms from here, but these are actually only an option, as Luigi can either open them or just walk through them instead for some reason. On the same token, the room at the top features a few tables that have no collision detection, and Luigi can simply just walk through them. Huh. It's almost as if Luigi is a ghost himself. The room on the left contains the male floating Merlinda floating around by himself. Since he is by himself without his partner, you can't capture him, and similarly to Shivers, if you try and scan him with the Game Boy Horror, the game will lock up. And lastly, in the room on the right, there is another King Boo, only this time he is above ground, but strangely enough, approaching him will also cause the game to freeze. This is likely the object that was used to trigger the final boss battle, but since it's in a different area, I don't think the game knows what to do with itself, so it basically just quits. And for the last stop of the video, it's time to move the camera around and see if we can find something out of the ordinary in and around the mansion. If we take the camera back a bit in the cutscene where Luigi goes to the mansion from Professor Egad's lab, we can have a nice bird's eye view of the mansion in all its spooky glory. When the game first starts in the mansion, Luigi tries to enter a door but is then startled by a ghost who drops a key. Oddly enough, I was able to find what I think is the model used to load this key, hidden half underground for some reason. If you come back to this room later in the game, however, the key is gone. Next, let's have a look around Professor Egad's lab. Although it's fairly small, there are still a few cool things that we can't normally see. First, if we zoom out, we can have a better look at the lab as a whole, as well as the ladder that presumably leads out to the above ground shack outside of the mansion. Also, if we look right, we can see the door which leads to the training room, which I don't think is ever actually visible throughout the game. The professor also has this weird sketch of what looks to be Luigi catching some ghosts, which I don't think we ever actually see in the game. Luigi doesn't often go outside in this game, but when he does, you might notice the ominous looking sky. If we move the camera, we can see that this is actually an illusion with a skybox and some fog. The way the moon works in this game is also pretty weird. Although we can see that the moon is actually pretty close to Luigi, if we move closer to it, it can grow to a massive size, almost scarier than the moon from Majora's Mask. Another thing that I found pretty weird in this and other areas is that when moving the regular camera, textures and objects behind the camera are culled, but when using the Game Boy Horror camera and moving it around, almost everything in an area is visible, which I thought was pretty cool. For example, outside, if we move it around, we can't see Luigi's mansion, but when using the Game Boy Horror, we can actually have a full view of it. Also, when moving the Game Boy Horror camera, we can see all that remains of Luigi is a single vacuum hose from the poltergust. Almost as if Luigi was a ghost. Okay, the last and arguably most interesting thing that I wanted to check out is how the teleportation system works. So in the game, if you take a picture of any mirror throughout the house, Luigi will bend the laws of physics and get teleported to the main foyer. Even if we move the camera, it still blows my mind here just as much. Here, I'll pull back the camera and let's see how Nintendo pulled this off. Well, I certainly can't explain that.
Luigi's mansion was first shown off at Space World 2000 during Nintendo's GameCube sizzle reel. All that was shown was a pre-rendered FMV, but it showed a very different game to the one that we finally got. The first scene featuring Luigi's mansion shows an early version of the mansion exterior, lacking chimneys and having quite a few less trees surrounding it. The image used on the pause screen for the final game is actually a remnant of the second scene in this early trailer. Most of the ghosts that we see are blue and quite different to the final ones, but there's a short scene showing some ghosts playing a card game, which can actually be seen here in the final game. The final game contains 2 unused icons for ghosts, which look quite similar to the ones that appear in this trailer. Nintendo also showed Luigi's Mansion in a promotional sizzle reel called the Nintendo Difference, which has a couple of differences to the final version. Luigi's head shows up in the bottom left corner of the screen to the left of the health meter, some of the time. This trailer may have been using footage from multiple different early builds of the game. There's a strange green border in some scenes of the trailer, generally ones where Luigi gets scared. The parlor is known as the living room, a more literal translation of the Japanese name. The text also has a lowercase r at the start of room. The lighting is slightly brighter in there, and the paintings on the walls are all the same pink ghost instead of people. The ghost haunting this room is purple instead of the orange colour used in the final game. When EGAD speaks, we can see that the text boxes aren't transparent like in the final game. The game was next shown off at E3 2001, with actual gameplay this time. Some scenes from the Space World 2000 trailer were reused for the E3 2001 trailer. There was a live gameplay demo at E3 2001 with Miyamoto playing. A lot of differences can be seen between this and the final version. EGAD is referred to as a doctor rather than a professor, and his name is spelt with only one D. The lab also has different music. The Poltergust 3000 has a much different design, which was left in the files of the final game. It's much less round and has 4 wheels on the back instead of 1 on each side. It also lacks the handle on the back and the tube comes out of the top. When talking to EGAD in this demo, he only gives you 2 options as the gallery wasn't in this version. Luigi's movement uses both analog sticks by default in this version, but is only an optional control scheme in the final game. There are blue vases around the mansion, which don't appear in the final game but have been left in the files. When Luigi opens the door to the mansion, he doesn't use a flashlight like in the final game. When he does have a flashlight, however, Luigi holds it with 2 hands instead of just 1. This change was possibly made to make it easier to differentiate between holding the flashlight and the vacuum nozzle. The health meter in the bottom left shows Luigi's total health, but the final game only shows his current health. When Luigi walks past a mirror, he lacks shading in the reflection for some reason. The Game Boy horror screen is one of the biggest differences between the older versions and the final game. It has a timer which starts at midnight and ticks up by a minute every 6 seconds. After 9 minutes, when the timer reaches 1:30 AM, EGAD will pop up to say that the demo is finished. The coin counter was not part of the Game Boy horror at this stage, but just part of the HUD. This spinning coin can still be found out of bounds in every single map in the final game. The HUD also has a heat meter, which counted from 1 to 10. It would cause the Poltergust to set on fire if it hit 10. The timer functions have been left in the game files and can be accessed with these action replay codes. A trailer was released at some point after E3 with a couple of differences. The Game Boy horror is below the screen for some reason, possibly to not get in the way of the ESRB rating. The heat meter is still here, but is now grey with much less functionality. The final game released in late 2001 and early 2002, along with the GameCube itself. Some unused graphics have been left in the files. It's a weird hand called hand1.bti in the Japanese version's files. 2 cut Game Boy horror camera icons exist for a boo and a key. Some unused dialogue icons exist, with one for a green toad, one for Bowser, one for the gold ghost, and one for Mario, which for some reason goes unused when he's trapped in the painting. The "From the Beginning" text from the E3 2001 demo was left in the files, but the skip intro button has been lost. The models for the doors in the opening cutscene have a texture for Luigi's hand, which is never seen. Speaking of doors, there's an unused model for a door with an art style that's different from the game's. Other unused models include a tall version of Mario with Luigi's proportions and...
For the sake of being a kind of... for showing everything... For the sake of showing everything, there are pieces of dialogue I forgot to show during the series. And so, here they are. Take that in the face, baby. Oh, wow, I got like a little over 80% of his health in 1 second. God damn. I've been able to actually get this guy in 2 cycles before on normal mode. When you are on Hidden Mansion mode, your previous high score will be shown below your total so that you can try to outdo your previous score. It is actually pretty thoughtful that they do this. Also, if you're wondering, you can also just go to the normal mansion and do the base game all over again. But if you go to the gallery when you've already caught them, your previous ghosts will be caught and they will be the highest rank that you caught them on. Which is, pretty nice. I wish I knew about this when I did my all gold rank portrait run a few years ago. But I still happen to have the file for which that thing is based on. In fact, I think it's still on this same memory card. Alright, so this is the file that I did the gold rank on. It took many hours of blood, sweat, and tears, but I managed to get gold rank on every portrait ghost in the game on normal mode, including Sir Winston. This motherfucker was the hardest one to get gold rank on. It took me a whole week to get this guy. And I remember on the last day, it took me over 200 attempts. I was so fucking angry by the time I caught him, but it was just such a rewarding feeling to manage to get him. This room, this file, is my monument to this. However, though, on the 3DS, all of them have way better portraits, I feel. Most of them, I think, are way better than what the originals had. And, the 3DS also has platinum trophies. I've mentioned this before, but platinum trophies are gotten through the Hidden Mansion mode on the 3DS, and you have to suck up 90% of the ghost's health, and I think you also have to do it quickly. From what I remember, if you didn't do it quickly enough, you did not get the platinum trophy. But I did manage to platinum rank the 3DS, all the portrait ghosts on the 3DS, so there's something. I didn't get all the achievements, though, but I don't care. I just don't care. But I think that will do it for this series. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope you all learned at least something. And as for what my next series is going to be, well, at the time of recording this, I think this will be it for the next several months because there will be a different series. Something for New Game Plus, but when we come back, well, we just had an adventure dealing with the dead. And when we come back, we will have a different adventure dealing with the dead. Instead of being on the GameCube and in 3D, well, let's just say things are going to get odd. See you guys then.